Hello. You know that feeling when you realize you've been the punchline of a joke you didn't even know was being told? Yeah, that was me. But don't worry, I got the last laugh. And trust me, it was worth the wait. Let's rewind a bit. My name is Jake, and until recently, I was what you'd call a happy husband. I had the house, the wife, the stable job, basically the starter pack for a comfortable suburban life. My wife, Emily, was the love of my life. Or so I thought. We'd been together for 10 years, married for 8, and in my mind, we were solid. Sure, things had cooled off a bit, but that's normal, right? That's what I told myself, anyway. Looking back, the red flags were there, waving like an overenthusiastic airline marshal. Emily had been acting different, distant, constantly on her phone, making excuses for why she was staying out late. At first, I chalked it up to work stress. She had a demanding job in marketing, always juggling clients, campaigns, and late-night brainstorming sessions. But then, there were the little things. She started wearing perfume to the grocery store. She suddenly became too tired whenever I suggested a date night. And then there were the texts always answered with a quick screen flip or a just work stuff excuse. I should have confronted her earlier, but I was too busy living in denial. That is, until the bracelet. One Saturday morning, while cleaning out Emily's car because, apparently, husbands double as free detailing services, I found a small gift box stuffed into the glove compartment. I thought maybe she had bought me a surprise. Cute, right? Wrong. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, a heart-shaped charm dangling from the chain. I smiled at first, and then I turned it over. The initials weren't mine. I sat there in the driver's seat, staring at it like a moron, waiting for some rational explanation to fall from the sky. Maybe it was for a friend? A relative? Maybe. No, screw that. I knew exactly what this was. Instead of confronting Emily right away, I did what any self-respecting, slow-burn revenge enthusiast would do. I kept my mouth shut. Because you see, Emily's birthday was coming up, and I had the perfect gift in mind. You ever watch a slow-motion car crash? The kind where you see the wreck coming from miles away, and yet, somehow, it still feels like a shock when metal meets metal? That was my life in the weeks leading up to Emily's birthday. Except in this version, I was both the driver and the guy standing on the sidewalk with popcorn, watching it all unfold. After finding that bracelet, something inside me shifted. I don't mean in the dramatic, oh no, my life is over way. No, this was different. It was colder, sharper. Like a wire had been cut somewhere inside me, and I was suddenly seeing things with absolute clarity. For the first time in years, I paid attention. Emily, my loving wife, was a creature of habit. She liked routine. Every morning, she had her coffee the same way, extra cream, 2 sugars, in her favorite ceramic mug that had a little chip on the handle. She left for work at 8:10 a.m. sharp, always giving herself just enough time to beat the worst of the traffic. She went to the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays but never on weekends. And every Wednesday, she had her so-called girls' night. Now, I'll admit, I used to be one of those husbands who didn't ask too many questions. Not because I was the trusting type, but because I figured if I started digging, I might find something I didn't want to know. Well, guess what? That theory turned out to be very correct. With the bracelet tucked away in my sock drawer like a ticking time bomb, I started my own little investigation. Nothing fancy, no private investigators, no GPS trackers, though, in hindsight, I wish I had gone full spy thriller mode. I just started watching, listening, keeping track. And boy, did the patterns start to reveal themselves. Wednesday nights were the biggest red flag. Emily would leave in her best dress, hair perfectly done, lips painted red, a shade she never wore for me. And every time I asked where she was going, it was the same story. Just drinks with the girls. Don't wait up. Here's the thing. I knew her friends. Hell, I liked them. A few of them were even decent people. So, I did the most logical thing. I called one of them. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah and I had never been particularly close, but we got along well enough. When I casually asked how their night out had been, she hesitated. Oh, yeah, it was fun. That half-second of delay? That was all I needed. I've heard a lot of fake enthusiasm in my life, and that was textbook. I didn't push it, just thanked her and hung up. Over the next few weeks, I kept my act together. I played the role of the clueless, devoted husband. If Emily noticed that I was a little quieter, she didn't say anything, probably too busy texting him. And speaking of him, I had a pretty good idea of who it was. Remember that work stress she'd been talking about? Turns out, it had a name, Daniel. Daniel was a new hotshot at her company, a senior marketing guy, a few years younger than me, the type who probably referred to himself as a hustler on LinkedIn. I'd heard his name before in passing, but only recently did Emily start mentioning him a lot. Oh, Daniel had this great idea at work today. Daniel is just so good at what he does. Daniel thinks I should apply for that promotion. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. You'd think the guy walked on water. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I found him online. A quick search later, and there he was, perfect teeth, stupidly expensive suits, and an Instagram full of motivational quotes about grinding and hustling that made me want to hurl my phone across the room. But here's what really got me. Emily liked nearly every one of his posts, even the cringy ones. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't have concrete proof yet. No pictures, no messages, nothing that would hold up in a courtroom. But I didn't need it. I knew. That damn bracelet had told me everything I needed to know. And that's when I decided. I wasn't just going to confront her. No. That would be too easy. Too forgettable. I wanted her to remember this moment for the rest of her life. And her birthday? That was going to be the perfect stage. Some men would have cracked under the weight of it all. Some would have confronted their wives in the middle of the night, shouting, demanding answers, hurling accusations that only led to crocodile tears and half-baked excuses. Others would have stormed into her office, made a scene, embarrassed themselves just as much as her. But me? No, that wasn't my style. I had a different vision in mind. A performance. Something she would never forget. It started small. I didn't need to set any dramatic traps or hire a private investigator. I just had to observe. The truth was already in front of me, wrapped around her wrist in the form of that delicate little bracelet with another man's initials. I kept it tucked away, out of sight but never out of mind, waiting for the perfect moment. Emily's birthday was approaching, and, as always, she expected me to plan it. Oh, and did she drop hints? The same way a cat subtly knocks a glass off the counter, she made sure to remind me of what she wanted, an elegant dinner party at home, catered, with friends and family gathered to celebrate her. Something intimate but still, fun, she said, swiping through Pinterest boards like a bride-to-be planning her dream wedding. And no surprise guests, okay? That last part stuck with me. The way she said it, firm, almost nervous, made me wonder. Surprise guests? What was she worried about? That I'd invite her parents and they'd bring up when she was still a good person? That some long-lost friend might come and remind her of who she used to be before she started sneaking around? Or maybe she was afraid I'd invite someone else. Interesting. So I leaned into it, played the part of the doting husband, nodding along, making plans, asking for her input. She had no idea that while she was busy deciding on the floral arrangements and the dinner menu, I was curating something far more unforgettable. The first step was the guest list. I let her believe she had full control over it, that she had handpicked every single person in attendance. What she didn't know was that I made a few silent additions of my own. One name in particular. Daniel. Yes, the man himself. Her workplace Prince Charming. Her brilliant colleague with the tailored suits and insufferable self-help book wisdom. The man who, if my instincts were correct, had already taken far more than just her time and attention. It wasn't hard to get his contact information. A simple LinkedIn search, a polite message pretending to be a grateful husband wanting to surprise his wife, and boom, Daniel was in. Now, let me tell you something about people like him. Men who believe they're untouchable, who thrive off stolen validation, who think they're too smart to get caught. They can never resist an opportunity to stroke their own ego. The moment I mentioned how much Emily always spoke about him, how she admired him, he practically tripped over himself to accept the invite. Too easy. With the guest list secured, I moved on to the atmosphere. The party had to be perfect, not just for her, but for the audience. Every detail had to be executed flawlessly so that when the moment finally came, there would be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. I ordered the catering she wanted. Set up the string lights in the backyard just how she liked them. Even went as far as to commission a ridiculous custom cake with a stupid little inside joke she thought only the two of us understood. And, of course, the gifts. She expected jewelry. She always did. Every year, she hinted at something sparkly, something to show off. Normally, I would have obliged. But this year, I had a much more thoughtful gift in mind. The bracelet. The same one I found in her car. The same one with another man's initials. The one that had sat hidden in my sock drawer like a live grenade waiting to explode. I had it professionally wrapped in a beautiful box, tied with an elegant silk ribbon, The kind of presentation that made it look like it had come straight from a luxury boutique. I even had the audacity to include a small, handwritten card. To my beautiful wife, who deserves all the love in the world. Happy birthday. I smiled to myself as I sealed it shut. The final touch? A speech. Because what's a performance without a monologue? I spent the nights leading up to the party rehearsing in my head, crafting the perfect words, the perfect slow reveal. No outbursts, no messy confrontation. Just pure, undeniable truth, delivered in front of everyone who mattered to her. By the time the night of the party arrived, I was ready. Emily wasn't. She stood in front of the mirror that evening, adjusting her dress, checking her makeup, smiling in that practiced, perfect way. She had no idea, not a single clue that this night wasn't about her birthday anymore. It was about her reckoning. There's a special kind of satisfaction in setting up the perfect moment. The kind where everything aligns just right. The setting, the people, the anticipation. It's like watching the last piece of a puzzle click into place, and suddenly, the whole picture makes sense. Emily's birthday party was that puzzle. And tonight, I was placing the final piece. The house was glowing with warm light. Laughter hummed through the air, and the scent of catered delicacies drifted through the space like an invisible welcome mat. Everything was perfect. Guests arrived dressed to impress, swirling glasses of wine, exchanging pleasantries. I played my part flawlessly, the devoted husband, the charming host, the man completely unaware that his wife had been leading a double life. Emily was glowing, basking in the attention. She thrived in the spotlight, like a performer on stage, soaking in every compliment, every toast raised in her honor. And then, right on cue, Daniel walked in. I watched from across the room as Emily's entire body stiffened for half a second, so subtle no one else would notice. But I did, because I knew her. Her eyes darted to me, checking my reaction. I grinned, raising my glass in greeting. The picture-perfect husband, Daniel, of course, had no idea he was stepping onto a stage that had been meticulously designed just for him. He greeted Emily with a polite nod, but I saw it. The flicker of recognition, the small pause before he pulled back. He wasn't expecting to see me. Emily did what she did best, smiled through it. She introduced him to a few people, brushed it off like he was just another coworker. But I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped her champagne flute just a little too tightly. Good. I let the night play out, letting them both stew in the quiet uncertainty, until finally, the moment came. The gifts. Emily perched herself at the head of the table, surrounded by ribbons and beautifully wrapped boxes. Guests gathered around, eager to watch. I made sure my gift was last. She unwrapped the other presents first, laughing and cooing over each one, playing her role perfectly. Then, with the spotlight still on her, I handed her my gift. A beautifully wrapped box. Elegant. Expensive looking. Exactly what she'd expect from me. She smiled. Big, bright, the kind of smile that had once made my heart skip a beat. She untied the ribbon, lifted the lid, and there it was. The bracelet. For a second, time stopped. Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she lifted it from the box. Her smile faltered, just for a heartbeat, before she forced it back into place. "Oh," she said, voice too light, too careful. "It's beautiful." I leaned forward slightly, just enough for our eyes to meet. "Read the engraving," I said, my tone casual. The room was silent now, guests leaning in, curious. Emily turned the bracelet over, her breath hitching as she saw the initials. Not mine. And now, the fun part. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, folded card. "You know," I mused, voice smooth, controlled. "I wasn't sure what to get you this year. But then I found this little thing in your car last month, and I realized, why not return the favor?" Emily's face drained of color. I unfolded the card. "You all might be wondering," I continued, addressing the guests now. "What's so special about this bracelet? Well, let me help with that. See, it has initials, but they're not mine." I turned to Daniel, who had gone utterly still. "Daniel, buddy, do you want to explain?" Silence. Pure, delicious silence. Someone gasped. Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Nothing." I tilted my head. "No explanation? All right, let me help out. See, Emily and Daniel here have been having, well, let's call it extra office collaboration for a while now." I let out a soft chuckle. "You've got to respect the commitment. Wednesdays, right, Em? A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emily shook her head, finally finding her voice. Jake, let's not. Oh no, let's. I turned to the guests. Did you know she told me she was having girls' nights on Wednesdays? Wild, right? Turns out, her version of wine night had a lot less wine and a lot more Daniel. Daniel took a step back, looking toward the door. I smirked. Leaving so soon? Stay? I'm just getting started. I pulled out the screenshots. Yes, I had receipts. I'd been collecting messages, timestamps, even a few security camera stills from a hotel lobby she forgot existed. I handed them to the nearest person, letting them pass it around like a school project. Emily's hands clenched into fists. Jake, stop. Stop. I raised a brow. Stop what? Stop giving you exactly what you deserve. I gestured to the party around us. This is your night, sweetheart. Let's make it memorable. And then, the final move. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. A thick, legally binding divorce agreement. Happy birthday, Emily, I said, sliding it onto the table. I figured since you like surprises, you'd love this one. Consider it my gift to you. The room was dead silent. Emily stared at the envelope like it was a venomous snake, her breathing uneven. I stood up, adjusting my jacket, feeling lighter than I had in months. Oh, and don't worry about the house, I added. It's already been signed over to me. You should probably start packing. If you thought I was done after handing Emily that divorce envelope, you'd be mistaken. I had no intention of slinking away into the night while she and Daniel tried to salvage what little dignity they had left. No, I wanted fireworks. And, oh boy, did I get them. The room was still dead silent after I dropped my little gift onto the table. The kind of silence that hums, thick and heavy, just before a thunderstorm crashes down. The tension in the air was practically tangible, guests shifting uncomfortably, some avoiding eye contact, others watching me like I had just grown a second head. Then, Emily snapped. You're ruining my birthday, she shrieked, her voice cutting through the silence like a siren. I let out a laugh. A genuine, belly-deep, disbelieving laugh. Your birthday? I repeated, shaking my head. Emily, sweetheart, I just handed you a personalized bracelet and a legally binding escape plan from this marriage. And you're worried about your cake and balloons. Her face twisted in rage, and she grabbed the nearest thing, her champagne flute, and hurled it at me. I dodged just in time. It shattered against the wall behind me, sending shards flying. Gasps. Someone even muttered, whoa. And then, Daniel made his mistake. He stepped forward, raising a hand as if he had any business playing mediator. All right, man, let's calm down. I turned to him so fast he flinched. No, let's not calm down, Daniel. Let's talk. Let's discuss how long you've been sneaking around with my wife behind my back. Let's compare schedules. Want to share where you were last Wednesday? Or oh, maybe you'd like to explain why your name is engraved on that pretty little bracelet. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Probably because he couldn't. Emily, however, had plenty to say. You're acting crazy, she screeched, hands balling into fists. I took a slow step toward her, dropping my voice low enough that only the closest guests could hear. Crazy? Emily, I'm the only sane one here. You are the one who decided that sneaking around with your coworker was somehow a better idea than just, I don't know, talking to your husband. She turned to the crowd now, seeking sympathy, eyes wide, breathing heavy. You're humiliating me. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Oh, I'm humiliating you? I'm humiliating you. Emily, let me remind you, I'm not the one who's been lying to everyone for months. I'm just the guy who finally decided to stop being a fool. Daniel had been quiet this whole time, probably hoping he'd somehow fade into the wallpaper, but I wasn't about to let him off the hook. Hey, Daniel. I said his name so sharply that he physically winced. He straightened up, trying to regain some of that corporate confidence he was known for, but the beads of sweat forming on his forehead told me everything I needed to know. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. He tensed. Let me ask you something. I continued, my tone casual. Do you normally sleep with married women, or was this just a fun little experiment? He swallowed hard, glancing at Emily, probably begging her for backup with his eyes. I tilted my head. No answer? All right, let's try another one. Are you planning on taking her home after this? Or were you expecting me to continue paying her bills while you two played office romance? That one hit hard. A few people chuckled. Daniel visibly paled. You don't want to do this, man, he muttered. I took another step closer. Oh, but I do. See, Daniel, I spent months putting the pieces together. At first, I ignored the signs. The late nights, the sudden privacy, the girls' nights out that mysteriously never included any actual girls. But you know what finally did it? You want to hear the best part? I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Security footage, I said, my voice light, like I was talking about sports highlights. Emily froze. Daniel's face went from pale to ghostly. Turns out, that fancy little hotel downtown, the one you two so carelessly picked for your secret meetings? Yeah, they have cameras. Cameras in the lobby. Cameras in the hallways. And guess who managed to get a hold of that footage? Emily actually stumbled back. You're bluffing, she whispered. I just smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Am I? At this point, guests were scrambling for cover. Some excused themselves quietly, while others stayed rooted in place, unable to look away. The sheer spectacle of it all had turned my personal tragedy into a full-blown public event. Emily's best friend, Sarah, was glaring at her. Her own parents looked like they were about to sink into the floor. And then, Daniel snapped. You know what? His voice cracked as he finally found the courage to speak. I don't have to deal with this. This is between you two. He turned to Emily. Emily, I think we should just... And that was when I hit him. Now, before you say anything, let's be clear. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-style punch where someone gets launched across the room. No, this was a simple, clean right hook. A short, controlled reminder that some mistakes come with consequences. Daniel stumbled back into the table, knocking over a bottle of champagne. People gasped, someone yelled, and suddenly, chaos erupted. Emily screamed, lunging between us. Jake, stop. Daniel scrambled away from me, one hand over his jaw, staring at me in pure terror. I adjusted my jacket like nothing happened. Relax, I told him. That was just my way of saying happy birthday. I turned to Emily one last time. You wanted a birthday to remember? I gestured around the wreckage of her perfect night. Congratulations. You got it. And with that, I picked up my drink, toasted the air, and took the longest, slowest sip of my life. Guests stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Daniel, defeated, humiliated, and now slightly bruised, quietly muttered something under his breath before practically running out the door. Emily stood there, shaking, completely and utterly ruined. I smiled. Now, this party was officially over. The room was in shambles. Guests were either frozen in shock, awkwardly pretending to check their phones, or whispering frantically to each other. A few were already making polite but very rushed exits. Daniel had bolted like a man who just realized he'd accidentally wandered onto the set of an action movie. The table was a mess, champagne dripping off the edge, gift boxes scattered, Emily standing in the center of it all like a fallen queen whose kingdom had just crumbled to dust. And I was having the time of my life. I stood there, sipping the last of my drink, soaking in every second. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for months had vanished. It was funny. No, it was poetic. She had spent so much time crafting this perfect image, curating a life that looked pristine on the outside while playing house with another man behind my back. And now, that perfect little image? Gone. Burned to the ground in front of an audience. Emily finally snapped out of her trance, her hands shaking as she grabbed my arm. Jake, she hissed, her voice low, her eyes wild with desperation. We need to talk. Alone. I peeled her fingers off me like she was something contagious. Oh, Emily. No. You had months to talk. I even gave you the benefit of the doubt, ignored the signs, convinced myself I was just being paranoid. But tonight? This isn't a conversation anymore. This is the end of a very bad deal, and I'm cashing out. She clenched her jaw, her breathing uneven. She had no idea what to do. She wasn't used to losing. For years, she had me wrapped around her finger, knowing I'd always be the rational one, the man who wouldn't cause a scene. But tonight, I had rewritten the script. Her parents, who had been watching everything from the sidelines, finally stepped in. Her mother, Janet, was pale, clutching her pearls like a character in an old soap opera. Her father, Frank, had the look of a man who had just realized he raised a complete stranger. Emily, he said slowly, voice heavy with something between disgust and disappointment. Tell me it's not true. Emily opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I chuckled. Oh, don't worry, Frank. If she won't say it, I will. Your daughter has been having a lovely little office romance while I was home playing Husband of the Year. And you know the best part? She wasn't even good at hiding it. Janet gasped. Frank just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Emily turned on me. You don't have to do this, she seethed, her voice trembling. You've made your point. I tilted my head. Oh, Emily, I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing this because I want to. She shook her head frantically, her perfect world spiraling out of her control. We can fix this. I messed up, okay? But you don't have to destroy everything. Destroy? I laughed. Emily, you already did that. I'm just the one turning on the lights so everyone can see the wreckage. At that moment, one of her closest friends, Sarah, stepped forward. You really did this, Em? Sarah's voice was shaky, but sharp. After everything? After all those nights you cried about how Jake was the best thing that ever happened to you. Emily spun toward her, desperate. Sarah, you don't understand. No, Sarah cut her off, furious. I don't. Because I spent years thinking you had the perfect marriage. I defended you when people said you didn't deserve him. And now? I feel like an idiot forever believing you. Emily's mask cracked. Her own best friend had just switched sides. Janet, now completely unraveling, buried her face in her hands. This isn't how we raised you, she mumbled, shaking her head. What have you done? Frank? He didn't say a word, just turned around and walked out. More guests followed. Like rats abandoning a sinking ship, one by one, people made their excuses and vanished. Emily looked around in horror, realizing she was completely alone. That's when I leaned in close, just enough for her to hear. Happy birthday, sweetheart, I whispered, my voice smooth as silk. Hope you made a wish. Because this is the last time you'll ever get one from me. And with that, I turned on my heel, took one last look at the ruins of her kingdom, and walked out the door. Behind me, I heard the sob catch in her throat. But I didn't turn around. I was done. 3 days later, the divorce papers were officially in motion. The house? Mine. She tried to fight for it, but fortunately, I had receipts, and courts don't look kindly on people who treat their marriage like a side quest. As for Daniel, rumor has it he tried to play damage control at work, but HR didn't appreciate having an employee known for breaking up marriages. Last I heard, he took a job somewhere across the country. Good riddance. Emily? She tried reaching out. Calls, texts, even long, dramatic emails about how she made a mistake. I didn't read them, just archived every single one. Because the truth is, I won. And nothing, not a single lie, not a single tear, not a single regret, was going to change that. Bye-bye.